Hello, this is Carl Bombach for Data 620, assignment 9.1 on time series stories. So let's get started. A baseball's recipe. How has the recent change in manufacturing formula affected the game? So some backstory: in 2014, Major League Baseball actually changed how the baseballs themselves were made. They changed slight like ingredients in the baseball itself. Resulting in a what is known as a higher coefficient of restitution. It's basically the bounciness of the ball, so when the ball's coming in, it hits the bat and bounces off a lot faster. They also made the seam, that red seam on the ball, a lot flatter, reducing drag, and then they made the ball itself slightly smaller. So the changes that were made, we can see if we can find any correlation between perhaps hits or home runs, or just getting the bat on the ball a lot more often, to see if the game itself has changed in any way. So, figure 1 here. This is a graph of the total home runs in a season per year from 1990 to 2017. There's a trend line there. I just used a regular linear trend line that you can see is increasing over the last couple of decades. But the interesting parts of the story is actually more granular when you look at each season. So you can see back in the late 90s, during the peak steroid era, you really had the Mark McGwires and the Sammy Sosas hitting the home runs each game. And you can see that it's quite a bit higher than average. And after the Major League Baseball cracked down on it, the steroids, in about 2003, the number of home runs really got back down to their normal amount, down to 2014. And Major League Baseball said, hey, there's a problem here. We really need people hitting a lot more home runs. So what do? We changed the baseball. So in 2014, they made those changes, and you can see a pretty drastic upswing in the graph, actually going higher than it was back in 1990 or 2000 there, when it was at its highest. So just because they did make the changes doesn't necessarily mean that correlation is causation, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that the changes made were the reason behind this upswing. So there's a couple of questions that you may ask as far as what could result from that. So you have the single graph here with a couple of different data points. You have the number of hits. One of the questions you may ask are perhaps players getting the bat on the ball more often. So just because they're hitting more home runs, it also might mean that they're getting more hits. They're just hitting the bat, they're hitting that ball more often. The number of hits that are in green actually has a slight downturn in 2006 and onward, but basically pretty flat. So not correlated at all with the home runs. And then perhaps the batting average, which you can see in the last couple of years has really gone down. The batting average doesn't relate to the home runs at all. Interesting to note that this is going downward, indicating that those home runs are actually a lot more than it even looks. It looks like a pretty high upswing, but it is even higher because of this batting average is going lower. The number of times people hit the ball, more often it is a home run now. Another question you may ask is, are players playing more frequently just because they're not getting more hits or getting more bats on the ball? Maybe they're just having more chances to hit home runs. So the number of total games that they're playing or plate appearances, also pretty flat since about 1998. They are not playing more or getting to bat more often in a game. They're staying pretty steady. Interesting to note that the huge downcrease here is in 1994. Major League Baseball actually had a strike that year, so of course you're going to play a lot fewer games, have a lot fewer plate appearances. So looking at those questions, it kind of really results in this ball changes causing more home runs in a season. So going back to kind of the initial graph here with a forecast, so this 2014 change, you can see that big upswing, and then the confidence intervals that Tableau has here, actually only saying 2021 is going to hit 5,000. I say this is very wrong. I think it's going to be in the 7,000s home runs in a season.